Patriotic education. It'll encourage our educators to teach our children about the miracle of American history and make plans to honor the 250th anniversary of our founding. I will soon sign an executive order establishing a national commission to promote patriotic education. Teach American exceptionalism. These are all words that were uttered by the President of the United States today in the National Archives while talking about a new patriotic organization that he is going to be launching to educate the youth on being a proper patriotic, America-loving youth. Of course, this organization is going to be called the 1776 Commission. And I'm going to touch on multiple things throughout this podcast here while trying to keep it super short and discuss the stark reality of this 1776 Commission and how disturbing it is that the President of the United States is doing this. Now, I would be amiss if I did not mention exactly why I believe he's calling it the 1776 Commission and not something else more in line with the Trump administration, MAGA, or CAG. And I believe it's in direct response to something the New York Times is doing, which is called the 1619 project. The 1619 project aims to reframe the country's history by placing the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the very center of the United States national narrative. The project was timed for the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first enslaved Africans in the Virginia colony in 1619 and suggests that this date represents the nation's birth year. Now, I may be just a little nuts, but I almost feel like the 1619 project trying to recognize 1619 as the true birth year of the United States due to that being the first year that enslaved Africans arrived on our shores, that probably is a very real reason why it's called the 1776 Commission. Another reason, of course, that he calls it the 1776 Commission probably has a lot to do with Donald Trump being just there to really frame everything around this patriotic mind frame of 1776 being this majestic and golden year for the United States. Now, some of the things that Donald Trump said during this. Many Americans have been fed lies about America being a wicked nation plagued by racism. He also said, the only path to unity is to rebuild a shared national identity focused on America, our common American values and virtues, of which we have plenty. This includes restoring patriotic education in our nation's schools, where they are trying to change everything that we have learned. He also said, American parents are not going to accept indoctrination in our schools, cancel culture at work, or the repression of traditional faith, culture, and values in the public square. Now, I picked these three specific quotes from the President of the United States for a very key reason. And it plays into the narrative that the President of the United States has constantly thrown out there. But before I get into this, I really want to hit on a historical perspective of what the President of the United States is doing here. And that is the historical precedent or perspective that was called the Hitler Youth. Now, for those who may not know, or those who are haven't brushed up on history, the Hitler Youth was Hitler's way of indoctrinating children into the Nazi way of life. The Hitler Youth was used as a tool to breed, to indoctrinate, and to educate Nazi youth in the way that the Nazi Party wanted for their 1,000-year Reich. Now, the Hitler Youth went beyond that. The Hitler Youth was used as a tool of nationalist propaganda. The Hitler Youth was used as a way to promote the traditional way of life. We've heard some of these words within these three quotes that I just selected from the President of the United States. The Hitler Youth was commonly paraded around and demonstrated to be the pinnacle of what it should be to be a youth in the Nazi Empire. Donald Trump's creating this youth movement. It was clearly stated in the intentions that this is being pushed right now to be ready to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the founding of the country. This is all a part of a very, very big tactic. The tactic which is indoctrination of the youth and moving them to believe in the traditional way of life. Now, Trump says in here that one of the quotes, many young Americans have been fed lies about America being a wicked nation plagued by racism. This is a direct hit back at the 1619 Project. The 1619 Project, which seeks to educate the youth to understand that this country was predicated on the idea of racism against a people and the enslavement of people. That's what the 1619 Project seeks to do. It seeks to remind people that most of the big things that America has been and has become all go back to its racist origins. Of course, Trump wants to push that off to the side and ignore that and try to push it away so that way he can build this history that he seeks to promote. He also says, the only path to unity is to rebuild a shared national identity which focuses on common American values and virtues, of which we have plenty. So what Donald Trump's trying to do here is create a organization which erases the culture, the melting pot of culture that is America, the melting pot of different identities and philosophies and cultures and stances and faiths that is America, and to whitewash it with what he finds to be the proper American way. The proper American way being a conservative, right-leaning child, white and Christian, proud and straight. That would be the traditional American way Donald Trump speaks about. Not the leftist growing population in the United States, not that LGBTQ stuff going on in the United States, not them Muslims or those Hindu or whoever, because that's not what Donald Trump wants. He doesn't want that in the United States. This is all a part of his plan to whitewash America. This includes restoring patriotic education in our nation's schools, where they are trying to change everything that we have learned. Patriotic education, by what the president is speaking about here, is actually just whitewashed history. The same whitewashed history that I was taught in schools, and the reason that when I was educated in the school system, I didn't learn so many of the atrocities that the United States has committed against people of color and indigenous people. I learned a very whitewashed history that was designed to not make me think that the historical precedent or the history of this country is predicated on racism. What Donald Trump wants to restore is that whitewashed history education in the school system, because the school system has slowly been adapting to teach the real history of the United States to an extent. They've been doing more about what the indigenous people of this country faced, what the people of color in this country faced. They're doing a lot more to reference the wrongs committed against women in this country. And they are starting to educate us, our youth, properly on what the Constitution does and does not grant people. Donald Trump also goes on to say American parents are not going to accept indoctrination in our school. I just want to hit back and say that this very project is indoctrination. The 1776 Commission would be literal indoctrination of our youth, indoctrination of those who need to be educated properly and educated properly on the history of this country. Now, another thing he says is cancel culture at work. I don't know exactly what he's saying, what he's trying to get here, but what I'm thinking he's starting to point at is like the fake briefing that came from Goodyear, where they said you could wear BLM, but you can't wear a MAGA hat. I'm assuming that's what he means by cancel culture at work. But then he goes on to say, or the repression of traditional faith, culture, and values in public square. Traditional faith for Donald Trump would be some sort of evangelical faith, Christianity, Catholicism, one of those. Traditional cultures would be the man marries woman, man and woman have kids, white picket fence, dog in the yard. He's hearkening back to that American dream that was never available to anybody that wasn't a affluent white person. And traditional values in public, what he is trying to talk about here is he's trying to talk about ridding the public square of leftist protesters. He's trying to rid the public square of people demanding justice for those that are facing atrocities in the streets. These all have direct historical comparisons to the Hitler Youth. These all have direct historical comparisons to the program that Hitler designed for the Nazi youth. I'm scared for what this is. See, this is just another step in a fascist regime. This is another tool for a fascist regime. And this tool for the fascist regime is to create a indoctrinated youth that will carry forward the idea of the Trump presidency. Obviously, I'm going to just kind of throw out some ideas that I think are some goals with this moving forward. This would be a system to create a youth that is more embracing of the idea of going to fight for the country, fight for the homeland. I have a feeling that this youth will probably have uniforms and have rankings similar to that of the Hitler Youth. I have a feeling that the goal here is to indoctrinate them into the philosophies and the ideas that Donald Trump has used as a core part of his political platform since before he was even president of the United States. So that way, as these youth age and as these youth grow, when they come to the point where they could serve in office, they are continuing the propaganda. They're continuing the platform. And this would hopefully create a everlasting monument to Donald Trump's presidency. This can't exist in the United States of America. I had a problem with the Boy Scouts of America for the same reason that I have a problem with this. It was a system to make you worship the state, the flag, and the Pledge of Allegiance. It was a system to make the youth pledge allegiance to something they didn't understand. It's the same reason I don't like the idea of having the pledge in classrooms. I don't like the idea of making the youth stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance because they don't know what they're pledging allegiance to. And unfortunately, if this goes through, I fear that the youth of this country that are enrolled into this program, whatever it may be, by the time they realize that they don't swear allegiance to the ideas of the program, it'll be too late. They'll be far too indoctrinated. By the time the youth wake up and say, I don't agree with how this country is run. I don't agree with the history of this country. I want to stamp out the atrocities that are the history of this country. It'll be far too late for them because they'll be too indoctrinated by the ideas of the 1776 Commission. I fear for the future of the youth that are put into this program, the future depression, the future mental anguish, the future problems with their mental health, just by being indoctrinated through a system to learn the whitewashed history of the United States, to learn traditional cultures. I fear for the youth that are entered in this program that are actually trans or gay or lesbian or asexual or don't. I fear for what they'll face within themselves. I fear the mental argument they'll have with themselves, the traditional thing that they were taught in the 1776 Commission, or how they feel. What's real? What do I do? I fear for what the suicide rates will be in young youth as they fight this mental battle between the traditional things they will be indoctrinated within the 1776 Commission, thanks to the fascist regime that is Trump and Pence, and that internal battle that they can't avoid. This is why we need to stamp out this fascist regime. As we get closer and closer to the election, he will put more things like this out there. He'll throw more insane ideas, more ideas that harken us back to authoritarian regimes and fascist regimes, because he's seeing that his base will not be wavered by it. His base does not care. In fact, I'm 90% sure right now, a bunch of people in his base, in his cult, can't wait to sign their children up for the 1776 Commission so that their children can be raised like proper traditional Americans who love the flag and love their country and love their Bibles. I fear this because this should never exist in the United States. And this is a continued proof that the checks and balances that we were told exist in the Constitution, that exist within the framework of this government, that would prevent this from occurring. This is just another proof that they don't exist. The checks and balances don't work if they do exist. Pandering to a fascist ruler and allowing him to get his youth, the Trump youth, the modern day version of the Hitler youth, that's the death of democracy. Stay beautiful, humans.